What is going on, everyone? Drake here. What we're going to go over today is going to be ways that you can improve on offense going forward for the rest of college football 25, as well as going into college football 26. This will just make you more efficient on offense, put more points on the board, make less mistakes, etc. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So the first thing that you want to do in order to become a better offensive player, you want to make sure to go ahead and learn a formation or a few different formations within a playbook. Now, what I mean by that is to basically cycle through the whole formation, look at what plays the formation has to offer, and obviously knowing what routes are good in this game just by like labbing or seeing what other people are having success with online, you'll know if the play is viable or not. Now, I'm not just saying pick a play or two out of a few formations and just cycle through them. You're going to want to spend time actually figuring out how to attack different coverages. So, cover two, cover four, match, cover three, as well as man coverage. You have to find different ways to beat that within formations. Now, I do not suggest using like suggested plays, picking plays like that. While you may have success sometimes dependent on the skill level of your opponent, you're not going to have success in the long run or get better as a player. So you want to make sure to look at what formations have to offer. So I have just Oregon playbook selected here so we can see there's a lot of good plays in the bunch strong offset, and this is why it's so popular. It has dagger, you have a flood, corner strike, and then some play action plays to go ahead and obviously attack some sort of like loop blitzes. Now, you also want to have at least a good run play. I like to have one good run play in formations, at least my base formation. So let's just say trio Y flex here is going to be my base formation. I'll see that it has quick base. Quick base is good. Quick base is something that can be ran versus loop blitzes very well. And then this formation also has a lot of other stuff to offer. So just looking at the plays here, you can see it has verticals. Verticals is great. Slots middle, if you look at this play here, what this play has, it has a short post over the middle. So you can see it's not as deep over the middle of the field. So it's going to do a lot better versus zones and getting underneath like deep blues and stuff like that, seeing it's a shallower post. So from there, you can do stuff like this here. You can drag B. You can leave X on this hitch. You can put them on extended out route. This is just a solid zone beater right here. We'll just call hike, run the play. Now, we're obviously in match, but you can see how the post got open. Now, also just taking a peek here at this formation further, this play shuffle slot in is very good because it has two seam routes as well as it has a motion running back wheel route, which will be good out of the backfield and a great way to attack zone. So taking a look here, you can see this. You got the seam streak here. You can pass lead this to the outside. It's just easy ways to attack zone. Now, a lot of formations here are hash mark specific as well. It just helps with spacing and forcing zones to like play certain routes. So if I run this to the short hash mark here, but the running back going to the short hash, it's going to be forced more to play the seam streak, which will allow this outside wheel to get open. So I can show you to here. So if you look at the wheel, you can see how much space it has on the sideline. It's the easy pass lead towards the sideline. So the other thing here to go along with learning formations and in offense. So if this is trio Y flex, if I decide this to be my base formation, you want to figure out at least one other formation that is going to be a good mix in. So if you're basically, so we'll use this as an example. So let me just set an audible for bunch strong offset. We'll come out in trio Y flex. So if our opponent is, we'll just pick a play. So if our opponent is in like a coverage like this and they're obviously making adjustments, you can simply just audible over to a new formation because this is one, going to throw off your opponent's adjustments and force them to obviously have to make new adjustments. Also, you can quick hike during those adjustments and basically just catch them off guard so you get a bunch of easy yards. Or if they're in like a certain type of defense, you can audible over because you know like this formation is going to destroy this defense they're in. So I'll go ahead and audible over to it in order to attack it effectively. So the second thing here you want to work on just to become a better player is just recognizing the coverages that your opponent is running. Now, this is something that's going to work great versus lower skill level players up to like intermediate level because they're going to just come out in their coverages and not make a lot of changes. So when you're playing like a high skill level opponent, they'll change up their coverage shells they're coming out in. So it's a little bit harder for you to know what coverage they're in and what routes to throw on the field. That's why you just have to make reads versus good players. So like you have your combos and obviously different ways to attack like zone if they're in like a cover three, if they're running like a cover six shell, etc. And you just obviously have to make your reads versus them. But you can see this is what cover three looks like. So I'll know my opponent's in cover three. I'll know exactly what to dial up in order to attack it. And then this is what cover two will look like. Just take some time going into practice mode and seeing what these shells look like when your opponent calls them. And then there's also obviously stuff like man coverage. Man coverage in sets like this is the easiest to tell because you can see everybody is aligned on the side of the field with a lot of wide receivers. So I'll know exactly what to do here, what to call in order to attack the man coverage. So it's as easy as that here, and it's something that you want to get used to. It'll help a ton. So moving on here to number three, and this is huge. A lot of players never do this, and you definitely need to start. And that is going to be learning to give up on a play. So what I mean by this is if your play breaks down here, instead of trying to like force something into coverage and throwing a pick, or just taking off with like your quarterback and like taking a hit or trying to make a huge play, something like that, simply just step up in the pocket here, nothing's open, throw the ball away. There's four downs, and sometimes you have to take advantage of that and give up on a play because the setup that you dialed up here is not going to work. It's not open. And this is something that top level players do. They learn to basically move on to the next play. Don't force anything. Either step up and take a sack just to not lose that many yards, or just throw the ball away. That way, you're not making mistakes and giving your opponents more possessions. All right, so moving on to number four here, what you want to do is mix up your plays. So example will be this. So our opponent is coming out in cover three. Let's just say we're hitting them with this setup here a lot. We can throw this out route, drag route, seam route, etc. So what you want to do here, and this is going to make you a better offensive player, is you want to basically mix up your plays here. So you want to throw stuff different at them to attack whatever coverage shell they're in. That way they can't go ahead and jump the route or adjust to obviously stop what you're running. So I'll usually have a few different setups here out of plays that I use in order to attack whatever coverage shell I think my opponent's in. So something like this here is something you can do as well, just basically to have other multiple or different ways to attack zone. So we're just utilizing different routes like that seam route. They pull deep blues really well. So a different route to attack zone. And then from there, I'll show something with this like short, sharp post as well. So you can do something like this with like a whip route, a table, and the post right over the middle of the field. Just a lot of easy routes to attack zone. So I'm mixing it up, and this is going to make it a lot harder for your opponent to catch on to what you're doing. Of that time I just got shedded. But you can see with these routes here, the routes are getting open, and you're going to basically just force your opponent here to obviously have to make a lot of adjustments or get out of whatever coverage that they're in. So the last thing, and this is super, super important for any good offense, it's going to be learning to score in the red zone. So what I'm going to count as the red zone is basically anything within the 10-yard line. So like from the 10 to the end zone, to the 5 to the end zone, etc. You want to spend some time in practice mode just seeing and finding different ways that you can attack easily in the red zone. So if it's just like finding some good runs, if it's finding a few pass plays, and I'll just let you know some good routes to look for in the red zone. You obviously can just try to run the ball every play, throw some RPOs at your opponent. If we're going to look at, let's see, trip side end is always one of my favorites in the red zone, so we'll look at trio right flex. Let me show you dagger. All right, so looking at dagger here, I'll usually run it within the 5, and why I do this is because they have 2 routes here that can bounce off the back of the end zone, and that's something that a lot of people like doing, is throwing routes off the back of the end zone, because they usually get underneath any sort of zones, or you can just typically like highball it at the back of the end zone. I usually run a setup like this out of dagger. Basically just have 2 flats to pull down flat zones, and then I either have this underneath route to throw, or I try to fit it in between the zones at the back of the end zone like that. Also, something that people will do is try to throw like corner routes off of the back of the end zone. So let me just find a play here I might be able to use. This shuffle sliding might work. So a lot of times people will run stuff like Tampa 2. Let me just go ahead and set the flat zones at like 5 or 10. So that way they don't play manned. So this is what this looks like here. People will do something like this, run them off like the back of the end zone. You can do stuff like that, whatever you really want to do. But then you can see they'll do stuff like this, hit them off the back of the end zone. Some of the most popular ways here to score inside the red zone with passing plays. And then, like I also stated, just find a few nice runs that you can mix in or throw in, either RPOs or like duos, stuff like that. So like looking at Oregon, obviously again here, not my cup of tea for playbooks. It's just the easiest to explain. You can see they have an RPO alert screen, and then they also have a duo run, so you can definitely mix up some RPOs out of that, cook up a few dots out of this play here in order to score easily. So I hope you guys did enjoy today's video. It's had 5 easy tips in order to improve on offense, something that you would just want to do for the rest of the year here in order to get ready for college football 26, so we can be the best that we can be. So if you guys did enjoy today's content, like always, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like today's video. If you have any questions, like always, comment below. We'll get to them as quickly as possible. We'll see you next time.